200 online watching as we're going. So from a small business perspective, this is a game. Oh, are we on?
Producers producing.
Yeah, hey, welcome to this week's edition of, doing a radio show. Hey, welcome to Waters Garden Center and our garden classes every Saturday at 9:30. So we've got a great group here today in the back greenhouse, Waters Garden Center. Today's class is on evergreens that bloom early. And there's a whole series. This is a great time to buy evergreens because you can see what they actually look like midwinter. Some plants actually change color. They get a little tinge to them. They're evergreen, but they're not always green. They can be gold or purple or gray. They change colors. And we'll show all those to you today. But there's some that are really sexy because they show off and they're colorful and they bloom. They're not only evergreen, but they bloom. And so the mountains of Arizona, this elevation, this Central Highlands, is famous for some of the best evergreens you can grow in the country. They're right here, and we can plant those right now. And so we're going over class on that. We've got a handout for you. I printed this up for you, Michelle. I don't have just a list of evergreens that bloom, but I have our top 10 list. This is top 10 fruit trees, top 10 head-high shrubs, top 10 ground covers, top 10 evergreens. Trees, top 10 evergreen shrubs. I'll send that just 2 pages of plants. It's not by any means everything that you can plant. It's the most popular plants. So I'll send that in a PDF format to you later today or tomorrow or whenever whenever our producer does that for us. Send that, but put your email down on that and we'll get that. You could also put your name on there because some of you, your handwriting is not so good. And we can interpret what your email address is by your name sometimes. It kind of helps us sometimes. Some of you are really creative gardeners. It's fun to see your email address. You're like rosequeen@gmail.com. It's kind of fun to see that. That helps us though. And then if you're part of our Waters Garden Club, how many people already receive garden information, weekly garden columns, videos, that kind of stuff? So a third of the group, great. If not, you should. So we write a weekly garden column, that kind of stuff. If you're on that list already, you need to sign up because you need to give us your email address because it's not going to all 12,000 people. It's only going to the 40 people here. You folks online, we'll put the link down below in the field so that you can have access to that too. We appreciate you tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. I think I got everything. This isn't on Instagram yet, right? Not yet.
It's not on Twitter and it's not on LinkedIn.
Oh,
YouTube and
Facebook. Well, there you go. So Ken makes us look good online. That's great. It'll be there at the bottom in the comment fields. If you're tuned in online, subscribe so you're notified when the next class is. And then also, if you could like it, that helps us as a small business. It really actually helps us. Those folks in the room, we would appreciate like a 5-star Google review. It actually helps small business. So when people are new to the area, they actually Google going, I wonder where a garden center is. Or it's amazing how many people talk to neighbors and go, you need to go to, word of mouth is huge. But they seem to start with 5-star. Is that what we're seeing right here? You brought friends? Oh, that's our great neighbors. That's awesome. It's amazing how many friends find each other in the garden center. They didn't know they were coming, but they'll start having conversations right in the middle. It's kind of fun to watch. This is a community gathering place. Anyway, today, evergreens that bloom. So Michelle Hyatt is a gardener extraordinaire, been in the industry for decades, and she just received her Arizona Certified Nursery Professional degree or certification. This is kind of like the bar as far as if you run botanical gardens. If you're into plants at all, it's pretty intense. You got to know Latin. You got to be able to identify plants without foliage, and then design a landscape around it and place it in landscape. It's pretty crazy. It's a 4-hour test. She just passed with the highest score in the state. Her and Amy tied. Yeah, it's amazing. It's just amazing. So our association just gave us a party going, oh, we've never seen this before. Let's go online and have a virtual party, which was fun. We had that last week. It was a great time. Anyway, Michelle's going to teach a class today for you. She basically runs anything that puts a flower on. That's her department, which is half the company. So annuals, vegetables, herbs, perennials. She controls all the growers, what's coming in. She knows what's going to be here. She controls all of our grows. So we contract grow with lots of different farms. She knows when they're going to be harvested, when they come in. I think your pansies just came in this week. They're glorious.
They're glorious.
Well done. So anyway, give it up for Michelle Hyatt.
I didn't do a radio or. Yeah, okay.
Speak loud.
Speak louder. Okay. So as Ken was saying, today's on Evergreens. And just so you know, Evergreens doesn't necessarily mean shrubs. There are a lot of things that are evergreen here that bloom. So we're going to kind of go through that. We're going to do some show and tell. And then we're going to teach you how to plant them, take care of them, and be successful with them. So I'm going to kind of start on this side and then work my way this way. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the beaked yucca. Most people don't consider this a evergreen, but it is. Keeps its nice green foliage, and it has flowers. So in the springtime, it will bloom. And they are spectacular when they bloom because it's not your typical, like the red yuccas that have the few flowers. It's really showy, but this one is just covered. It almost looks like eggs sitting on a stalk. So the flowers are spectacular. Get about 4 foot tall, and then they do start with the stalk. So they're interesting in a landscape, more of that drought tolerant aspect of them. So, you know, it just kind of depends on what kind of landscape that you're looking for. So what I like to tell people is to definitely be creative, look around, be open to new ideas. You know, because we're kind of in that deserty climate, some people think that I just have rocks. I just want green. There's different ways to get that green, and that way you can enjoy it. So this is a sapphire skies beaked blue yucca. Also on that more drought tolerant side is the manzanita, which we're kind of all familiar with. They grow wild alongside our roadways. Most of the native ones will get really big. The native ones don't transplant very well. They're out there, but they're really hard to get established in your landscape. So the growers have come up with varieties that are easier for us to sell and for you to plant, and they take off a whole lot better. And there's a variety of sizes of these, so they can fit into spots. You know, if you're looking for a taller one, the Howard McMinn's manzanita will get about 5 feet tall. It's more like the native manzanita. The red, really pretty red bark, the pink flowers that are blooming right now. And in the landscape, they're not quite there yet, but because these are grown and shipped in, they're come from Oregon and such, so they're a little bit ahead of time. So we get to show off the pretty flowers now. This guy here is the Panchito variety. He is the more moderate size. He's going to get about 3 feet tall and about 5 wide. So he's a great landscape plant that looks good as just shrubbery. He keeps this nice green foliage all year round. You still get the red bark, and it turns more red in the wintertime. You notice it more. Great plant. There's also a low-growing manzanita that only gets about 6 inches tall. It's called Kinnikinnick or Massachusetts bearberry. I'm not quite sure where that comes from, but it's really pretty. Smaller leaves, and I would show you one, but I don't have any. Kevin sold them all today or yesterday. But great evergreen ground cover as well. guy here is what we call the gopher plant. He is an euphorbia. Great little plant, kind of almost prehistoric looking, I think. The wonderful thing, and you can kind of see they're starting to bud out. These have the most beautiful chartreuse yellow flowers, and they're fixing to pop. At least mine is at home. Very, very drought tolerant. Once they're established, once every 10 days, every 14 days watering is about all they need. So a great little plant, and most animals do not like them. However, this year I had a few munches. I think all our animals are really, really desperate. And so hopefully with the snow, we'll start seeing some grass start growing and all that stuff. So hopefully all that animal damage will start going away with the snow. Rosemary. Rosemary is a great evergreen, and it does bloom little pretty blue flowers. There are several types of this as well. There's the upright rosemary that's going to get in at 4 to 5 feet tall and about the same wide. It can get massive. So just kind of keep an eye on it. You can, prune it off if it starts getting way big, and you can eat it. That's what the great thing is if you're barbecuing, you can go and clip off the sticks, throw it on the barbecue, and you'll get that essence when you cook. There's also a Huntington carpet rosemary. He's a creeper, so he only gets about a foot tall. But he'll creep around the ground and be more of a ground cover for you. But rosemary is great. Green all season, blooms a couple times a year, and the blue flowers are actually a true blue flower, so they're really, really pretty. This is another very drought tolerant shrub. This is a Mahonia. This is the compact Oregon grape holly. Very pretty native. It grows up in the mountains. I grew up in Colorado, and we had this all over the place. Mine wasn't big like this. It was the creeping one, but every spring you knew it was springtime because these guys are blooming. Once these are done blooming, they get really pretty little blue berries that are edible. They used to tell me that they used to make jams and stuff out of them. The birds love them, so if you're into birds, it's a great thing for the fall feeding. The birds will eat them all for you. In the wintertime, this guy gets bright red foliage, almost maroon, so it's really, really pretty. Okay, that's that. Those were my really, really drought tolerant stuff. Now we're going to kind of go into the shade loving things. Unfortunately, a lot of the blooming evergreens are shade lovers. They can't tolerate our hot sun. And one of the things I warn people about, especially if you're new, be careful of the tags. Because if you read a tag, it's going to say it likes full sun. Well, they make the tags for the whole country. They don't specify where they're specifically going. We are a mile high, and so we get that high intensity sunshine, and we have no humidity whatsoever, especially in the summertime. We get down to negative dew points, so there is no humidity during the summertime. So these guys will just fry if you put them into a sunny spot. This is an azalea. Azaleas are semi-evergreen, which means that if we have a particularly cold winter, you're going to lose some leaves. However, if it's kind of mild and doesn't stay cold for very long, you'll keep your leaves. It's kind of like your roses. Sometimes they'll keep their leaves during the winter time, sometimes they don't. Gorgeous flower, groups of flowers, and they are spring blooming. The one thing with the azaleas, rhododendrons, hydrangeas, all of that stuff, they like that low acidity. The acidity level here, our pH is so very high. Between our watering and our soil, it's just harmful for our low acid plants. So we need to add amendments to make them grow better and lower that acidity, keep it more even. And I'll get into that more later. So the azaleas come in a variety of sizes, colors, so you can pick the one that's what the tags are good for. They'll tell you what size they're gonna get. So read the tags for that information, ignore the full sun. This guy here is a rhododendron, and the rhododendrons and the azaleas have kind of the same looking flowers. It's usually the leaves that are a little bit different. But again, another shady plant. They can tolerate a little bit of morning sun, but make sure that they get that afternoon shade. Very, very, very important. Rhododendrons are another one that kind of come in different sizes. So, they do have dwarf ones that are about 3 or 4 feet. And then there's some that get in that 5 to 6. This is the purple gem, and this is one of the lower growing ones. Alrighty. I think Ken talked about these a little bit last week, but this is Lily of the Valley, also known as Purus. They're called Lily of the Valley because they kind of look, we were talking old-fashioned a while ago. There used to be bulbs, or there still is bulbs, that grew in shadier spots that had little flowers like this, and they were also called Lily of the Valley. The flowers are exactly the same, but this is a shrub variety. These guys can get big, and then there's a few dwarf varieties of these as well. Come in a multitude of colors, so you can kind of pick which fits into your landscape theme. Some have the variegation, whereas this guy just is green. Very, very pretty, shade lover. These guys will probably need a little bit more water than the yuccas and stuff, but once they're established, once a week watering is plenty. This guy here is a gardenia, and this is the sweet star. We get several varieties of gardenias here that are frost, that can handle our frost. They are also evergreen and need that sulfur to lower the acidity on them. Little white flowers that are so very fragrant, very, very pretty flowers. And these guys will get, there's a couple of them that get a little bit taller than others, and then this one's a smaller one. And heaths, these are heaths, Mediterranean pink, and then this guy's the white. These guys are also one of those shady lovers, don't like the hot afternoon sun. Very pretty. Once the flowers are done, they are spring bloomers, so once the flowers are done, you just have a nice little green shrub. Both of these kind of get in that 3-foot-ish range. They're a smaller shrub, but have really pretty little fine leaves on them. So another really pretty landscape shrub. Daphnes. This is the eternal fragrance Daphne. And these guys are so fragrant. I just mentioned the gardenia. These are even more fragrant than the gardenia are. Really pretty, drought tolerant, shady shrub. But these guys will get in that 4 or 5 foot range. Really pretty pink flowers. Some of them are white. So it just kind of depends on the variety that you get. There is one that has the variegation in the leaf, but also a shade lover. So that's the bad thing, is a lot of the evergreen shrubs are shade lovers. So a lot of people will come in and ask me for a blooming evergreen that loves the sun. Okay, not there's too much out there, but there are evergreens that have color, not necessarily shrub, flowers. So that we can work with that. If you guys are willing to work with that, we can find you something that'll fit in that spot. Isn't he pretty? So this is the Ice Angel Camellia. They are another shady shrub. This is one of the bigger ones. So this guy, if you let him, will get in that 6 to 7 foot range. They can be pruned to keep them a little bit smaller if you'd like them that way. I always tell people never go more than 1/3 of the size. So, if you're looking for a small shrub and you want one of these, this is probably not the right shrub for you, because you're going to be hacking away in it. And eventually it's going to say, this is too much. Because every time you prune, they push out new energy, and that takes, food and all that. So try to find the right plant for the space that you're trying to fit, instead of making the plant fit in that spot. So Ice Angels come in the pink, and then there's a red. To me, in my eyes, they both look kind of pinkish to me, but this one's a light pink, whereas the other one's kind of almost a orangey pink. But color's so subjective, so what do I know? All right, so this is a boxwood, and everybody's familiar with regular boxwoods, but these guys bloom. It's not very significant to your eyes, but the bees, we're so desolate right now because things are just now starting to wake up. These flowers open early, so the bees are going to be going after these little flowers, and it gives them nectar. So we're helping them, if you plant something like this, to keep them fed and healthy until stuff starts blooming. So keep that in mind when you're doing landscape. The great thing about boxwoods is they're so versatile. This one's Green Mountain, so it's a taller variety and a little bit narrow. So if you need some upright color in a space, this is a great one. The Winter Gem boxwood kind of gets 5 by 5. So if you're looking for a hedge or just a nice round shrub, the Winter Gem will work perfect for you. All right. So that's kind of all of my shrubbery. I do have, and it wasn't specific. As far as shrubs, it's just evergreen bloomers. So these are a few of the perennials that are evergreen that do bloom early in the spring. So I think everybody's pretty familiar with the periwinkle or periwinkle vinca. Great shade-loving ground cover. Pretty aggressive as far as taking over a spot. So do make sure that you kind of want it there, because I had a couple of people say, I can't get rid of it. So, you know, put it in a place where it's okay if it takes over and it'll be fine. But I mean, this flower is really, really pretty. There's also a wine color vinca. So if you want to kind of mix it up, you can definitely do that. And these two guys I love because they can handle our sunshine. This is a dianthus, basically a carnation. These guys will stay this really pretty gray blue all winter long. Mine has been budded for like 2 weeks now, and I'm just waiting. It's like, come on! But I like it because it gives me a pop of color in my pots. I have 3 of them in my pots, and it just gives me something to look at during the wintertime instead of a dead pot or a few pansies that are trying to survive through those cold and neglect that I have done. There's a variety of different colors. This one is the Pinball Wizard, which is kind of a pink and white variation on the color. We have red, there's a watermelon color, and then there's a red and white, more of your traditional dianthus flower. And then regular dianthus is kind of a biannual. I sell it as an annual, but usually it sticks around for quite a while. So great plants that give you some color in the wintertime. This is Iberias or candy tuft. Really pretty green mounding foliage that'll stay green all season long. Little white spring flowers, so it just kind of looks like snow patch on your ground. Most of us do have all of the rocks and stuff that we tend to mulch with, but this just gives you a patch of green and then a really pretty white color. Okay, so we kind of mentioned how that we're going to go into the acidity. These guys really like a lower acid soil, and as I said before, our pH is very, very high, so we need to lower it. So there's a couple of products that we have that will help do that, and you can use them in combination. So this is our regular all-purpose fertilizer, and like we were talking earlier in the day, now is a great time. Usually it's March that we tell people to go out and fertilize your yard. So for those folks that are new here, we fertilize a lot. Our soil is, the nutrients in our soil are pretty much non-existent. So we need to feed our plants regularly. So for our deciduous plants, we're going to feed them 3 times a year. So Easter, 4th of July, and Halloween, or quarterly for those math folks that like to keep it on schedule. The only one that we change is the Evergreens. We do a New Year's application. So we have that December timeframe. So if you feed regularly, you're going to see better, healthier root growth, which will give you healthier greenery. Because if your roots aren't healthy, your shrub won't be healthy. So we want to make sure that we're giving it the nutrients that they need. The 744 has a little bit of sulfur in it. So if you use it regularly enough, it'll help lower that pH. But for these guys, they really like that low end of the scale. So we add soil sulfur. The soil sulfur will even bring that number down a little bit lower. You don't have to do it the 3 times a year, but I do suggest that you use it in the spring and in the fall. That'll help keep these guys going and in that zone where they need to be. When you're planting your evergreen shrub, like everything else here, you're going to dig your hole twice as wide and just as deep as it's sitting in this pot. You want a kind of a base shape, and you never want to go. It's okay to dig your hole in the when the soil is moist, but don't go in wet, or you're going to create a concrete block that once those roots get to that edge, they're going to stop. So make sure that that outside of the hole is really, really roughed up. So it has a crevice to go through. We do 2/3 of the premium mulch, 1/3 of the premium mulch, 2/3 of the natural soil. We never want to make that hole so rich that the plant isn't going to do its thing. It's going to say, hey, I like it here, I'm not moving. And eventually your upper part's going to know that its roots aren't moving, and then it'll decline on you. So make sure that the edges are scratched up 2/3 to 1/3, and you should be just fine. With your planting, watering is a little tricky because of our temperatures. We kind of go with the flow. Hopefully everybody was winter watering this winter because we only had the one snowstorm. So even if you have to drag your hose out every 2 weeks, you should be watering. Now that we're kind of getting warm, almost time to get those sprinklers turned on. Again, it's one of those things, kind of watch the temperature, or continue to drag the hose out. Right now, I'm watering about every 10 days or so because I'm starting to dry out at that point. When we talk water, we have such a versatile area. Some are very granite and it drains really well. Most of us are in that clay zone where all we have is that clay, and clay holds water very, very well. So we don't want to overwater, and especially in those areas, because we're going to be in trouble if we do, because those roots just can't handle that much water. So water when it's dry, let it go if it's wet. Okay, I can't stress that enough. And if you learn your irrigation system, once a week watering for established plants is all you need, as long as you're getting the volume that the plant wants. So learn your irrigation system, learn your emitters, because that's going to help you set it up for the time. So can't stress enough, water is usually our biggest issue at time. And most of us overwater. We see something like this, and, oh, we need water. We don't even check. And I do that a lot. It's like, it's just nature. You want to nurture it. So make sure you're sticking your finger in the ground. If your finger comes out kind of moist and dirty like this, you're okay. Let it go for a couple of days. Check it again. Right. There were a couple of plants that I did not touch on because I don't have them. Pyracantha is another evergreen that blooms. It's also known as fire stick or fire thorn. It also can be confused. There is a shrub that's down in Phoenix that's also called fire stick. The fire stick has a little bit of orange flower on it. Really pretty, but it won't survive up here. But this is the Pyracantha is an evergreen shrub that will get pretty big, especially the Victoria variety, or Victory variety. White flowers in the springtime, and then it has the orange berries in the fall and winter, and the birds love it. So it's a great thing if you're a bird watcher. Cotoneaster I didn't bring up. Most people are familiar with the Cotoneaster, more of a ground cover that a lot of people have. Little green leaves, red berries in the winter, and they have little white flowers. So it's a great ground cover. It comes in a couple of different sizes. The Shrubs is the very low ground cover. It's 6 inches or less. The Eckholtz is about a foot tall and will get about 6 feet wide. And then there is the Coral Beauty, which is the 1.5 to 2 foot size range. So all of those are evergreen, berries, flowers, great. Deer, rabbits, all leave them alone, so that's a good thing. So, all right, I am done with my spiel. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
The application for the sulfur, what is the ratio on it? How do you give it out?
Her question was, is the application for the sulfur? So it kind of depends on the plant that you're planting, but if I was to do like this guy, I would put probably a 1/2 cup in with my regular fertilizer, and then just kind of either mix it in or just let it, as you water it in, just let it soak into the soil. If it's, this guy, I'd go a little bit more, maybe a cup. Kind of keep it in that, you don't want to go too heavy because it only breaks down at it breaks down at a slow rate. So I wouldn't go more than a cup on whatever you're going to plant, unless it's really big. Yeah.
I'm interested in which ones of those evergreen shrubs are wildlife.
Her question is which one of these shrubs are wildlife proof? So this guy, not so much. The boxwood is great. Nobody messes with it at all. Usually the yuccas and the gopher plants are fine. Like I said, I had a few bunches this year, but I think it's just because they were so desperate. Manzanita, they don't mess with. The Mahonia, which was this guy, very drought, or nothing messes with this as well. Everything else, is pretty much deer food. The dianthus is deer proof, rabbit proof. Nothing messes with it. Javelina is a whole other story in itself. Typically, the javelinas aren't eating your plants; they're after whatever's underneath it, and they tend to they're just messy. They're like that little kid that lives next door that just likes to be a menace, Yeah.
On the ground cover, the one with the purple, I forgot the name of it.
The vinca?
Yeah. So I have this big area in front of my house, and all it really is, I've got some trees and a couple of shrubs there, but there's no water to that area. How much water would that need, or does it? And then how far would you, if you got one that size, how many feet would something like that take over, so I know how many you need to get.
Right. So her question is that she's interested in the vinca. She doesn't have water going to that area, so how much water it uses or needs, and then how far apart should she space it? So as far as how far apart you should space them, it kind of depends on how fast you want them to really fill in. They, like I said, they're very aggressive, so I would say probably every 3 feet. because they're going to fill in really quickly. If you're a patient person, you could probably do 4 because they're going to grow that fast. Watering once a week should take care of them once they're established. I mean, anytime you have those new roots, you want to make sure that the roots don't dry out, and that's the key. You don't want your roots to dry out when they're newly planted.
Would that help keep the weeds down?
Absolutely.
So if I do one.
And she asked if that would help keep the weeds down. So anytime you have the ground cover or mulch or even the rock, it's a great mulch. So basically, when you're mulching or looking for a ground cover, all we're doing is covering the soil, and it keeps everything nice and evenly moist. So it doesn't get that hard pan, just baked earth. And that keeps that from happening. So ground covers are great if you just have a spot that you just want to fill up. Or you could use like the big, if you have a shadier spot, it's great.
Would that,
So I have a question online.
Sure.
Robin would like to know, of these plants that you've shown, what will attract hummingbirds and butterflies, if any?
Okay. Do you want me to repeat that? Okay, so Robin Online is looking for hummingbirds and butterfly attractors. So the hummingbirds have already started looking at this Mahonia. So yes, they're out and they're ready to go. So the Mahonia, the camellia, the hummingbirds love that. They've already been in this greenhouse looking at or using it. The manzanita is a little tough just because the flowers are kind of down, but for hummers, they're looking for tubular plants. So anything that has a tubular flower is a hummingbird magnet. So that's what you're kind of looking for with the hummers. Butterflies are more versatile. They like a lot of different things. They also like more landing pads, so a flatter flower, the butterflies will like. But any type of flower that has a scent, or any type of flower period, will attract those guys. So that's what you're looking for.
I remember the question.
Okay.
Okay, so do you have to do anything? Can you just put the ground cover in the ground just the way it is, or do you have to put soil and prep the? What do you have to do for that?
So her question was, do you have to prep the soil when you put the vinca in? And basically every time you put a plant in the ground, you want to prep the soil, unless you've just done a whole bed. So 2/3 natural soil, 1/3 mulch. So it doesn't have to be a whole operation. I mean, basically with that, if you were going to plant 3 or 5 of those, you'd use probably a half a bag of mulch. And just kind of mix it together. I usually take my wheelbarrow out when I'm planting, and then I dig up my hole and I put my soil in the wheelbarrow. I mix it with the mulch, and then I just backfill that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Faster growing plants?
Her question was, are any of them more faster growing? Most of these are will moderately grow. The rosemary is really fast. I planted a little 4-inch pot a couple of years ago, and he's about this big right now and about this wide. So yeah, they grow pretty quickly. Mahonia is a little bit more moderate, so probably about 6-8 inches a year. The rest of them are more on the slower side, but there's a few that are faster growing than others.
Yeah, which ones would do better in pots?
Her question was, and it's a great question, which one of these will do better in pots? So the natives, I would probably plant in the ground as opposed to the pots. Your camellia, your rhodies would do great in a pot. Reason being is with a pot, you're doing potting soil. So you don't have that acidity problem because you're starting with neutral territory to begin with. However, this fall, because you've been watering with your hose, the pH level is going to kind of come up. So in the fall, you would add the sulfur to it, and then the next spring. But they do really well in the pots. Camellias in the pots. The Daphne could go in a pot. The thing is that the bigger the plant's going to get, the bigger the pot you're going to have. So kind of keep that in mind when you're looking to plant. Yeah, if you've got a smaller pot, you want something that's going to stay small. Yeah.
The carnations, will they tolerate full shade? I have pots on either side of the garage that's pretty much all shade.
Her question was the carnations do full shade? Probably not. They like that sunshine to bloom, but there are other things that'll be coming in soon that will fill that spot. So like a hydrangea, they're not evergreen, but they like that shady spot. If you have a pot, you could do the camellia or a rhodie. Both of those would do great in that shady spot. Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
When you use a pot, you change the soil every year, or do you replenish it?
His question was, do you replenish the soil in a pot? I would say kind of depends on what you're planting in it. So are you talking about something like this? No. Okay. Just generally, okay, so if you're talking annuals and stuff like that, usually I replace the top like 6 inches or so, just to get some fresh dirt in there. It'll help. But again, with your pots, don't forget to fertilize because there's usually no nutrients in there, so you've got to feed them. Anything else? All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming, for all your great questions.